up everybody, welcome to another video, and today we're going to talk about Bucephalandra. Let's go. Bucephalandra is a really nice plant. It's not a high demanding plant. You can grow it in low light, you can grow it in high light, you can grow it with ton of nutrients, you can grow it with little nutrients or low nutrients or dosing lean. So it's not an expert plant as most people, at least here in Mexico, portrayed it to be. So the first thing I want to point out about Bucephalandra is that when it blooms in bad environments and it blooms in good environments. What does this mean? So when I started the hobby, I bought a plant, I put it in my tank, and it started blooming right away. And I was super hyped. I was like, okay, I'm doing something right. My plant is doing great. It's supposed to be a difficult plant, but I didn't have CO2, I didn't have a good light. I had just this RGB light I bought off the internet for like, I don't know, maybe 30 bucks, and it was not good enough. Plants were never pearling, all of my plants were melting. But the Bucephalandra was not melting yet, it was blooming, and I was like, whoa, maybe this is what I need to do. Just get Bucephalandra and just throw all the other plants out. But that was just ignorance on my side, and misinformation as well. So plants bloom when they are happy and they bloom when they are not happy. They bloom when they are not happy in order to reproduce or to better their genetic with a plant that's already in that environment. So if that plant is already adapted to that environment and you introduce a plant from the same species that is not adapted to it, it's going to try to mix with the other plants in order to get the better genetics in the next generation of plants. I think that's really interesting, and that's one of the ways that Bucephalandra reproduces, by seed at least. And the flower has both male and female sides. The female side will be exposed for a determined period of time. It varies from plant to plant and from environment to environment, but I've watched that about for 3 or 4 days maybe. The female part will be exposed in order to get the plants that bloom earlier to pollinate with the male part and vice versa. The female part is out and the male part is going to be on the underside, and this is going to be, as I told you, when the environment is not good, and also when the environment is perfect for them and you're seeing that they are growing, that they are pearling, that they are just reproducing like crazy by rhizome, because that's the other type of reproduction that they do, by rhizome. So from the main root, it's not a root, but it's like the stem, the main stem. I'm pretty sure you're most familiar with Bucephalandra, but if you're not, the rhizome is like the main structure of the plant, and from that main structure it's going to develop new plants, and from those, when those plants start developing new leaves, the rhizome is going to elongate and it's going to create a new rhizome, and that's going to make the plant bigger. So that's why you can see some of the plants just growing in different spots, from different spots, but on the underside is just one big mess of roots and rhizome. So when they are happy, they will bloom, but you are going to see that the plant as a whole is growing. And when that happens and they bloom, it's a good sign, because it means that the plant wants to make more of itself in that environment that it is happy in, and it's going to assume that the other plants are healthy as well. And you need at least 2 of the plants, when it's immersed, you need at least 2 of the plants to be blooming at the same time in order for them to get pollinated and reproduce. I'm really not sure if you can reproduce them by seed underwater. I'm pretty sure you can't, and that's why they reproduce by rhizome more often than than with flower, but outside of the water you can definitely pollinate your plants. You can get the pollen from one plant and you can put it in the other plant flower, and it's going to generate seeds in a couple of weeks. So you can grow your Bucephalandra from seed. It's really tough. I haven't made that attempt to. I haven't made an attempt to do it yet. I'm going to try it out as soon as my immersed setup kicks up with the Bucephalandra, because the Anubias are already growing really well, but they take a little less time to adapt. The Bucephalandra is a little bit more picky when it comes to immersed and submerged change, or like to mutate the growth and the leaves to an immersed or submerged setup. So as soon as I get some flowers, I'm going to try to do that, and it's going to be really interesting to see if I am able to. So that's the first thing that I wanted to point out about Bucephalandra. The thing is, when you get your plants, suddenly you come to your tank and you see one small Bucephalandra just floating around your tank, and you're like wondering, how did that happen? Did I cut it by accident, or did a fish nip it, or something like that? I don't know. Well, no, the thing is that when the plant is not happy in a spot, or when it thinks that, when the plant feels that it could be better off in another part of the environment, it's going to detach itself. When you see the rhizome, it grows in sections like your finger is, so it's going to melt one of those sections, but it's going to keep the rest of the plant in both sides from that melted section healthy. And this means that the plant is trying to reproduce itself and not just grow in that same spot, but it's trying to go to another place in your tank. So if you're seeing that your plant is doing that over and over and over, then the smarter thing to do is just rip that plant off from that spot and try it in other spot, maybe in a shaded spot, or if it's doing that in a shaded spot, then put it in a brighter spot. That's just the way that I've been doing it, and I've been successful in setting up my plants in the places that they enjoy being in. If you want your plants to have big leaves, put them under the light, straight under the light. High lighting for Bucephalandra provokes it to have bigger leaves. I know that may be a little bit counterintuitive, because in the wild or out like in nature, most plants, when they have bigger leaves, it means that they need more sun, and if you give them more sun, the leaves will be smaller. This happens with trees and with shrubs and bushes and stuff like that. Bushes, they when they work, the leaves work like solar panels, so when the solar panel is not getting enough light for the plant to sustain itself, it's going to generate bigger leaves. And on the other hand, if the sun is blasting it and it's just it does not need that much light, the leaves are going to become smaller. But I've noticed that Bucephalandra is the other way around, and this is, I think, because they grow in low light environments. So when they find a spot with a ton of light, the plant is just one whole organism. It's all joined together by the rhizome and by the roots, and the leaves are just a way from them to catch food or light. So they are going to find that spot that has a ton of light, and they're going to grow bigger leaves in order to sustain the rest of the organism or the rest of the plant. So if you have trouble with your plants being too small, just blast that light and they are going to grow bigger with time. It may take some months for it to adapt, but it's going to grow way bigger. And if you want your plants to get smaller, then you can just trim most of the leaves, off of the rhizome. Don't be scared. You're going to stress your plant, but it's going to generate new growth if they are in a nice environment. So if your tank is already established and mature and your plants are growing like crazy, you can just tear up part of rhizome. You can just cut the leaves off. You can just stick it in another place with low light, and then the leaves are going to be way smaller. It's going to grow compact, and it's going to be smaller leaves. It may grow a little bit with smaller leaves, and then it may shoot a bigger plant as the solar panel when it's getting more light. So that may happen as well. I have some examples here that I have just a tiny plant all around the rhizome where it's a little bit shaded, and then I have one bigger plant that it's acting like the solar panel and it is feeding the whole organism in the back that is shaded. The same happens with anubias, I think. When I have my anubias on, like just on the light blasting, I don't know, maybe 10 inches apart from the light, the leaves are just massive, and when I have them in a little bit shaded areas, most of them keep their leaves medium size. And that's not true for all plants, but at least for Bucephalandra, I find that it's the best solution. If you have another opinion, or if you have experienced otherwise in your tank, please let me know. I'm always open to a friendly discussion and to know what really is happening, because this is just my experience and this is just my environment, and a ton of people must have another point of view about this, and they have different experiences. So it's always good as a community to share what our experiences have been and what's in your mind at any given time, or at any given change in your environment. If you see that your Bucephalandra is detaching itself, then let me know why do you think this is, and let me know what have you done to fix it. My experience is that I just move the plant, or I attach it to another side, and then I compare the growth between the two of them. If it's better in one in either side, then I just focus on growing them in that spot. For example, this plant, I bought it when it was really tiny, and it started blooming. It started growing new plants, and then I don't know, 3 or 4 of those points of growth just detached themselves from the main stem, and the main rhizome stayed there, and that main rhizome is the one that provoked all of this growth. But the other smaller plants, I had some of them immersed, I had some of them given to a friend, and some of them I glued to the shaded area, to the shaded area of the tank, and it's not developing as well. It hasn't grown basically anything in months. So I just have like maybe 2 or 3 new leaves, but I can see that it's growing a little bit, a new plant. So maybe in the next 2 or 3 months I'm going to have another opinion about this shaded area with this same plant that I have in this super bright area. So that's how I go about placing my booze. I think it's a really important thing to plan where is your Bucephalandra going to sit inside your tank, because if you put it in an area that's not going to be happy, it is going to melt. It's going to try to move itself like anemone do in saltwater tanks or in coral tanks. You know, they almost walk. Well, it's the same principle. If it's not happy, you can just put it whatever, and if it's not happy, it's going to tell you it's not happy. You have to be savvy with these bioindicators with your plants. You have to get familiar with the indicators that your plants give to you. And if you do that, you're going to be set for life with your plants. They're going to be healthy, and they're going to be happy forever, and they're going to grow a ton. So next up with Bucephalandra, when you want to reproduce or cut the new plant like willingly, when it does not detach itself, when you want to detach the plant, wait until the plant is big. Just be patient, because if you cut it when the plant is really tiny, the growth is going to be really tiny. The energy that the plant has stored in that section of the plant is not great. So if you have a massive plant and you cut it from the rhizome, even if you don't leave like a lot of leaves in that cut off rhizome, that's the part that's going to have the more roots to intake nutrients. It's going to have more energy stored in it, so it's going to just keep pushing itself to create new plants. I just did this, and I'm going to show the progress within the months, but I had my Bucephalandra, I think it's silver powder, and I had a huge growth, huge plant maybe five leaves, but big leaves with great coloration, great size, and I just cut it. I waited 3 months, I cut it, and then now I have a big plant that it's in my immersed setup, and I left the smaller plant that was developing aside, and I left the main rhizome with all of those roots attached to the rock. And this was maybe a week ago or less, and I am now seeing that where I cut it, it's already developing a new plant. It's that strong. The roots are so strong and the rhizome is so strong that it's already developing a new plant, and that plant is going to be small for a little while, and then it's going to be huge, and then it's going to develop another huge one on the side, and I'm going to have 3 or 4 plants big, because the rhizome they are growing from has a bigger diameter, so it's going to be able to nourish bigger plants. And if you do that with a small plant and you trim it, you are going to have small plants all around, and the rhizome that you leave cut off, it's going to be like a little pinhole diameter, and that's going to only sustain the growth of pinhole plants. So if you want big plants, if you want quick growth, wait until the rhizome is thick and the plant is strong and it has a ton of roots, then you cut it. Just wait, be patient, and the results are going to be massively increased, and it's going to be better for your plant, and you're going to have the better odds on your favor for that plant to thrive in their new environment, or in the new setup, or in the new placement in the same tank. So I think that's the main things that I wanted to share with you about my experiences with Bucephalandra. What happens when it detaches itself, what happens when it blooms, when the environment is not good, what happens when I trim the plant and it's not ready for it, and what happens with placement in between the tank. I think those are really important things to take into consideration when you're setting up your tank, or if you already have your tank set up and you're looking and you're seeing that your Bucephalandra is not growing as fast and it's not growing as beautifully, then you may have that issue over there. You may want to check those bioindicators that I was telling you about. If you find this information to be useful for you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps our community grow, and it's going to help you to keep your plants simple, and just don't fight with them, just work with them, and it's going to make your Bucephalandra and your tank and your planted tank just beautiful, and you're going to enjoy this hobby way more. Thank you for watching, and I really appreciate you taking the time. Please comment down below your thoughts, and if you have different experiences, different inputs, I love to hear them. I love to read all of the comments, and I answer each and every one of them, because I think this is what it's all about. We need to build a community around Bucephalandra, around planted tanks, and just get the truth out there in order to keep your plants healthy and keep them simple. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Peace.